Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. The best founders are always the ones who are solving problems they know inherently. In the case of today's guest, his entire career has led up to building a platform that helps the hospitality industry in ways that the corporate sector has benefited from for decades. From being a 5-time James Beard-nominated chef to tech co-founder and podcast host himself, Matt really does have the magic in him. Please welcome today's guest, co-founder of MAJC.ai, Matt Jennings.
You get the drum roll there. Very good. Very good.
Thank you. I love a punny beginning, and sometimes they don't land with people, and then I have to explain my jokes.
Yes. Well,
I'm like, great.
That one was perfect. So thanks for the lead in.
Thank you. And thank you for connecting. This is what I love about social media is that we can just shoot the shots and be like, I like what you're doing. Do you want to do something together? And this is essentially the first cross-promotional podcast episode.
Totally. No, it's awesome. And, I've been a fan of what you've been up to and have been watching and listening. And it just felt like a natural opportunity to say hello.
Thank you. And same here. I'm so excited you said hello. And I'm excited for you to tell your story because I do mean it when I'm like, wow, you are one of the most multi-time founders that we've had on the show so far. Like you seem to have a really big bug for just starting new things and going after it.
Well, for better or worse, I am what my wife would refer to as a serial entrepreneur. So once it's in you, it's in you.
Mm-hmm. We know that in this household. That is how my partner and I met.
Yeah.
Many moons ago now. That we can't get over the bug.
Yeah. And I think so long as you learn to embrace it and recognize that with that decision comes a kind of twisty, turvy road, then, you're good.
It's an exciting road, I will say. There are some good views, but yes, agreed. It can be very difficult. So let's take things back a little bit here. Before maybe, I don't know what you were doing as a kid. Maybe you were starting businesses. But before what we know today, when did you first fall in love with food? And what was your connection to food and cooking like growing up?
When did I first fall in love with food? Well, I think I first fell in love with food when I got my first job. I was 14 and it was a summer gig and I was hired to be a stock boy in a grocery, a little kind of small family-owned local grocery. And so my job consisted of everything from stocking the shelves and taking inventory on sodas to folding the papers on Sunday. So I'm dating here, but this is back when the paper would arrive in different pieces and you'd have to assemble the Sunday papers before they went out to the floor. So I would do that. And the owner of that grocery also owned a little cafe next door. So I'd kind of like go in for my shift and walk past the back door of the cafe and look in and see all the cooks and hear all the clanging of the pots and the smells and all the things. And I was like, whoa, what's going on in there? That's cool. And so over the years, as I worked for him, I ingratiated myself by always being early and showing up and doing the things that other people didn't want to do. And as I was taught from a young age, and I said at one point, what's the cafe all about? I want to get in there. And so one thing led to another and got to chop my first onion and the rest is history.
So you're drawn in by the smells. You're drawn in by, again, what we hear on this podcast all the time, kind of that level of humming, the chaos that's coming from behind the scenes, that then you suddenly get some beautiful food, some delicious food in front of you, whether it's haute cuisine or whether it's just good home cooking that you would see, say, at a cafe.
Yeah. And I think being that young, impressionable age, like you're looking around at your peers too, and the cooks just seem so cool. I was like, who are these like guys with the cut off kitchen pants and funny colored socks and clogs and like the whole thing? I was just like, there's something really cool going on here. So I want some of that.
Yeah. The artist uniform really drew you in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say? So, as you're cutting your first onions, as you're behind the scenes there and getting to know what back of house looks like, what was maybe an aha moment that you said, I actually would like to do this as a career and find your way towards culinary school?
Well, let me be clear that my foray into the kitchen was not pretty. I was the kid that was pushed, all of the things that you would imagine, mopping and scrubbing and all the things that came along with that, and refilling the Cokes for the line team, and just being a general catch-all for all the stuff that nobody else wanted to do. But I think that for me, it was actually not about the food per se, as it was like that culture, that environment, that ability to like have people around you who were interesting and creative and inspiring, and that camaraderie that came with all of that. Like that became my home away from home. And I think that's what really kind of showed me that work could be fun and work could be rewarding, and that you can also make some bucks along the way, and that doesn't hurt either. So I think like putting all of those things together in a young mind, it was kind of like, oh, well, if I have to work, if my parents are saying, hey, get a job at 14, 15 years old,
No.
but I can do it in a way that's like I get home at the end of the day and I've got some good stories, that sounds okay.
Yeah, 100%. I liked working early too. I was very like, what do you mean I have to have a worker's permit at certain ages? I was kind of like against child labor laws. I don't know. It was something about, like you said, feeling very rewarding where you're in this sense where it's like, it's not grades at school and it's not, in my case, times with swimming. It was putting your effort into something and then people pay you for it and say, good job. Or they say improve in some way.
Yeah, it also means to an end for me. Like I had a moped. Okay. So my grandfather gifted me his like old 70s puke, or however you say it, puke, or I don't know, PUCH moped that he used to use to like bomb around the golf course, or I don't know what he used it for in his younger, more spry days. But it got gifted to me. And so that was like my freedom, right? Like I'd get on my moped and go see my friends, and we lived in a pretty safe community. And so it was like, that was freedom to me. So I was like, all right, well, if I want to be mobile, I got to pay for gas for this thing. So there was a reality certainly there too, that I think the ambition of wanting to work was both the desire to find that community and that camaraderie outside of the home, but also to take control of your own destiny a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that definitely leads to the entrepreneurial mindset too, is like this constant sense of like just being in control or wanting your own sense of freedom than just what's ascribed for you.
Yep. Yep.
So tell us where you ended up going to culinary school. What was that decision like? And how did it really shape you? How did it start shaping the cuisine that you started to become known for that you really fell in love with?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate that I grew up in New England, so I was always surrounded by, the kitchens that I worked in initially were not by choice. They were there and they provided an opportunity, so I decided to pursue them as my entry-level jobs. But I was always surrounded in those kitchens by great ingredients. And I just ended up working in places just not intentionally necessarily, but in restaurants and for chefs that prioritized ingredients. And so there was something about that. Like I saw that happening and I was kind of like, oh, cool. Like the guy is coming to the back door and bringing fish like right off the boat. And I recognize that's not everybody's experience. It's no less more valid than, growing up and working at KFC or whatever. But there was something there that connected me, I guess, on a deeper level. And so I think as I grew in the industry, I kind of always was trying to seek those types of places out because it was what I knew. And so culinary school, when the opportunity, well, so let me go back. I went through the typical kind of childhood in terms of like parents saying, high school is not the end. Like there's something else for you to do, whether that means you go get a job, a full-time career minded job, or you go to college or whatever the thing is. They were in support of whatever, so long as I was a contributing member of society, I think. I did try liberal arts school for a year. It did not go well. I wasn't like a big sit in the classroom, take copious notes and perform well on exams type of kid. And I kind of knew that about myself, but I needed to go to liberal arts school to prove it. I don't know. Sorry, mom and dad. And so after that first year of college didn't really pan out the way anybody was hoping, my dad said, why don't you take a breather? And why don't you go back to working? And why don't you really think about what you want to do? And if it means moving out and getting your own apartment or whatever the thing is. And so I went back to cooking and I was like, yeah, this is it, actually. This is what I really love. So how do I do this? What's the best way for me to do this? And at that time, I think in the 90s, culinary school was certainly, I would say, more of a thing than it is now. And we can talk about that. But it was kind of the only path at that point. And so I looked around, I looked at Johnson & Wales and CIA and other stuff that was regional, but I fell in love with New England Culinary Institute in Vermont. There was so much there, I think, from a sourcing and ingredient perspective and the exposure to small farms and the exposure to small communities that were just formatted around the food system, the general food system in New England. It was really profound. I don't think I was thinking about it in that way at that time, but it felt, again, familiar and like, oh yeah, okay, cool. You know, there's an opportunity here to learn butchering. I ended up going out in the forest with my first professors in culinary school and foraging for mushrooms, like all these sorts of things that would come to, I think, just inform the way I thought about food. And so Necky was the place for me, and it was phenomenal. While I was there, it was kind of in this renaissance moment of attracting incredible professors, instructors, and a student body that really loved what they were doing and really felt connected. And it was awesome. I don't regret it at all. It was a great way to spend my formative culinary years.
I love your journey getting there too. I so appreciate that your dad and your mom, I'm guessing, were just both willing to look at you and say, we can't force Matt to go down a certain academic route. Let's just give him the time to figure out who he is and what he wants to do. And then you end up at this amazing culinary school. It sounds incredible. It sounds very hands-on, which I think maybe some other places are just so classroom focused that maybe you wouldn't have had those experiences anywhere else.
Yeah, totally. There was no like big seminars. It wasn't that type of a vibe. It was very hands-on, very learning by doing, which resonates with me as a pretty bad ADHD kid. You know, I needed to be in it and have my hands in it to see the true value. Yeah. And I think the opportunity to pursue culinary arts was always there, but it was not like I was going to be able to sit back and take a year off and really ponder it and read books. Like my dad, he was serious and he was like, you're going to do something. You're not just going to sit around. So I always worked, whether it was leading up to that or through college or any of it. I don't know. I love to work. I still love to work. And my kids now are learning to love work too. So it's in us.
Yeah. Again, like there is that sense of just loving putting your heart into something and putting your all into something and seeing the fruition of it. And in your case too, I love that you are so focused on those small farms, the sourcing for proteins as well. So you really fell in love with, again, just how I wish we all could be eating all the time, which is just the freshest of food.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, like I recognize it's not necessarily the most normal kind of introduction to the food, beverage, hospitality world, but it was what I knew. And I also grew up in a family that like really put an emphasis on cooking at home. And my mom is an incredible cook to this day. And I learned so much by standing around with her in the kitchen and my grandmother and baking cookies with my grandmother and all the things. So like if food was just always a thing. It was a thing that my family would use to create opportunities for the larger family and friends to get together, for the neighborhood to come by, like whatever. Like it was just food kind of drove everything. And my dad was an extremely prolific gardener and was a landscape architect by trade. And so we always had family gardens that were like out of control and vegetables. And so there was always just stuff growing. And my dad was always out in the yard and doing stuff and had his hands dirty and was building stuff. And like, I don't know, I just grew up around that kind of an environment.
Yeah. And it just goes to show that when you see it firsthand, and especially when kids get to see it firsthand, they can like, again, feel really proud of how they're helping with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to us post culinary school. Where did you end up staging? Where did you end up working before you said, I got to be my own boss. I got to start my own thing?
Well, I spent some time on Nantucket, had some family connections out there. And so continued to fall in love with the food scene in New England. And in some ways, like I never really left Nantucket in my teens and 20s. Like it was because it was always there in the summer. It was an opportunity for me to go back when I didn't have school and make really good money and just grind and work my ass off for the whole season and turn around at the end of the season with a bunch of money. And that was super rewarding. I think I made some connections there that brought me back to Boston, my hometown, and ended up working. It's funny, I ended up working in a couple of restaurants in Boston that are now no longer with us, but that were really formative for me. One was Truk, which was in the South End, Amanda Leiden, who was an incredible chef. I worked for Amanda for a little bit, and I remember being back in my apartment after a shift and kind of just like questioning, I think, my schedule because all my friends were out partying, having fun, and I was working every night. And I was, what am I doing? What is it like to live on the other side? Because I didn't know anything any better up until that point. And I saw a job in the paper that night, or in the want ad section, for a cheesemonger position at Formaggio Kitchen in Cambridge. And I'm like, oh, I like cheese. Cheese is cool. I love cheese. I like to eat cheese anyways, but didn't really know what that meant. And so I applied and I was called in to interview, met the owner there, Isan Gerdal. We hit it off and he offered me the job. So I started working days for the first time in my life as a cheesemonger and just fell in love with food even more deeply because Formaggio is this hallowed institution. It's kind of like a food museum for people that know and haven't been there. It's an amazing gourmet shop. And Isan was a maniac in all of the best ways. He would go all over the world, source incredible products from small producers and bring them back to his store and sell them. So you'd have everything from the most exquisite, first pressed olive oil to, oh gosh, fig cake and chocolates and coffee and just amazing, amazing things. Pastas from Italy and sauces and all sorts of incredible stuff. So it opened my eyes for the first time of the global opportunity that existed with kind of high quality food. And so I fell in love with Formaggio. I fell in love with Isan. I fell in love with the whole thing, and the responsibilities there grew. I ended up becoming one of the store managers and I just loved it. My first day of work there, I went early, as I would always do, informed by my dad, and showed up 5 or 10 minutes early. And this 6-foot tall blonde with jean cut off shorts and a white tank top answered the door and let me in. And that was my to-be wife. And so she was working there at the time as the catering manager and bakery assistant. And so I'm like, this is cool. This is everything, right? Her was here and the whole. So anyways, we went through that and worked at Formaggio together for a while, started dating. And then she actually got into a couple different baking programs, one at CIA at Greystone in upstate New York, and then another one at CIA in Napa Valley. Both of them were the accelerated baking and pastry arts program. And so we were like, are we going to keep dating? What are we doing? And she said, where would you move? And I said, well, I'd move to California before I ever moved to upstate New York. So after dating for about 6 months, we packed it up and we moved out to St. Helena. And that's when I started to fall in love with California cuisine and the wine culture and all of that stuff. So got my West Coast fix as well.
I definitely understand that. I also had to leave the Midwest and go to the West Coast and keep talking about it all the time that we hope to find ourselves back out there one day. But I always love a hospitality love story again.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple now where it's the first day folks end up meeting their spouse, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that she can then understand too that as you've gone through your own ventures, exactly the level of work it takes, because when you're a founder, if you don't have a supportive partner, and not just financially from some aspects, but just emotionally, it just makes the biggest difference in the world.
Totally. And I had been fortunate enough to do some travel prior to that because Isan had sent me a couple of different places for the shop. So to Italy to work with some cheese producers in Tuscany and Piedmont, and then to the UK to work with Nielsgaard Dairy in London. So I was really bitten by the bug. And by the time we moved to California, I was like starting to, in my head, form this kind of, I think, influence, right? Like I'm seeing a lot of the same kind of attention to detail in the production of artisanal foods taking place here in the US and New England to some degree, and then Europe, and now in California, being exposed to like, the bounty that is California in the growing season. It was like all just in my head and like stewing and starting to really take a hold of me.
So you're out in wine country. You've, like you said, fallen in love with everything food can be and how it tells stories, it influences culture, it helps us get to know other folks and the importance behind immigrants and imports. And I'd love to talk more about that further. But let's talk about that spark for Townsman. When was the moment? What was that journey like? And how did it take off and then turn into your next opportunities?
Yeah, well, Farmstead came first, which was my first restaurant. And that was born out of the realization that Kate and I don't think we're ready to commit to staying in California long term. And so we said, well, let's go back east. But if we go back east, I said, I don't really want to work for anybody. I think I'm ready to do something. And so what does that look like? So I literally started like sketching out stuff in my notebooks when we were living in California for what would become Farmstead. So knowing that I had the kind of retail chops at that point from a food retail perspective, and also some of the baked in culinary experience, I wanted to open a small specialty gourmet shop myself, but where we would make a lot of our own food. And so Kate would bring the pastry element, I'd bring the savory, so we'd have the kind of bases covered. So we moved back to Providence, Rhode Island, kind of sight unseen. We chose Providence just because we wanted to be in, a liberal city with liberal arts colleges and universities nearby, and kind of an emerging city then. And so there was like an affordability piece to that too, right? Like we can afford to move back to Providence. And we moved back kind of sight unseen, had Kate's sister check out an apartment for us. And as soon as we hit the ground, I started just looking at different opportunities, like were there spaces available, what was available, what was affordable, all that sort of stuff. I ended up walking into a cheese shop in Wayland Square in Providence that had been there for over 20 years, family owned, kind of the last standing cheese shop of a small string of them throughout New England. There was the cheese shop of Darien, the cheese shop of Concord, and the cheese shop of Providence. They're all connected at one point. And Providence was one of the last independently owned ones. And so I said to the lady behind the counter, like, hey, if you're ever interested in selling, let me know. I'd love to kick it around with you. And she was pretty hesitant and said, this is what I do, and I want to pass this on to my grandkids and the whole thing. And she called me the next day. And so she was ready to talk. And so that ended up being our first restaurant. So we opened with a small, probably 400 square foot store. And we were there for about 12 years and grew that, ended up taking over the space next door, blasting a hole through the wall, opening the restaurant, built a cheese cave, all the things. So yeah, it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
My gosh, I like how cheese is your through line here.
I know, right. Yeah,
Oh, man.
so that was Farmstead, and we were fortunate that we got a lot of great accolades and recognition, and our staff was awesome, and that was lovely. It was never the reason why we did it, but it gave us some kind of, I think, belief in knowing that we were on the right path. And then a number of years later, so we opened in 2002, 2003, and then in probably 2011, 2012, we had a group of developers that were coming down to the restaurant all the time from Boston. And they loved Farmstead, and they would make it a point to come down as a destination. And one night, one of them said, hey, we're building this big new building downtown Boston across from State Street Financial. Would you ever be interested in doing a project up there? And so that was exciting for me. The idea of coming back to Boston, the idea of taking the concept that we had and blowing it out and doing something bigger and more exciting and different. And so that became Townsman. And in order to do that, I realized that I wasn't going to really be able to drive back and forth between the two all the time. So we sold Farmstead and rooted the family and everything and moved up to Boston to open Townsman in 2014.
Wow. So you shipped up and back to Boston.
Yep.
My other moment here.
Yeah.
So you go back to your roots. What would you say were some of those biggest lessons and the difficulties that you faced with a bigger market, a bigger space here? And, you had developers involved in this case. Would you
Yeah.
then say, were they your investors? Was this your first time essentially taking money from other folks?
Yeah, it was a combination of, finding private investors, and then the landlords kicked in as well. Yeah, it was the first time. It was nerve-wracking. And I think a lot of lessons learned in that whole process, right? A lot of unknowns as you're going into it and a lot of knowns on the other side now. But it was kind of the only way for us to be able to make it happen.
Yeah. And it's scary too. When you take someone else's money, it feels so necessary for growth, but you realize you have a boss now and you're trying to earn back X amount of money for people, which, as we start to talk about your tech products too, that is a whole other ball game if you get into that VC world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So without skipping your incredible background that's led you here today, I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about magic. I mean, you end up opening Full Heart Hospitality. You earn these James Beard accolades. You write a cookbook that also is award-winning, Homegrown. What do you think really drove you to doing all of these different types of projects? You didn't stay really in a singular lane.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great question. I don't know that I have a good answer. I guess I can only give the answer that I know how to give, which is I love learning and I love like putting myself in uncomfortable situations and learning from them. And I think that is what has always kept me perpetually seeking more, is to try to better myself and to create environments and projects and products that feel like they're giving back to the community in some way, have some sort of effect that's bigger than me. So I think that's what's landed me where I am today, not without a lot of hard lessons learned along the way, for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I think like it really shaped your founder background too, which is this feeling where you're like, I'm a generalist. I like learning everything. Or if I don't know something well enough, let me learn it and let me teach myself. Let me go learn from folks who are better at it than me. But at the same time, it's within a mission, it's within a passion that all has a similar through line, and not just cheese.
Yeah.
In your case.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me that's always lit me up about this business is people, right? Like at the end of the day, like the best hospitality operations thrive because of the people that are within them. And I always made it my mission to make sure that I was building great teams, that I was doing everything I could to support those teams, that at the very least I was open and transparent about the desire that I had to pursue excellence and trying to get everybody on board with that. My wife will say that I'm a perfectionist, and she's not wrong. Like, I think that that has its pluses and its minuses for sure. But it was always like I kept that piece of the business part of my life as a North Star, like always wanting to try and create really special things. So one thing has led to another, and I guess now I'm a tech bro. I don't know.
You're kind of a tech pro now. I mean, we might have to get you in some like Patagonia vests or
Oh
something.
God, no, not yet. Not yet.
That's very New England of you too. But so I love this moment. Again, I've worked with some food tech founders before. I've interviewed them. I'm so interested in how software comes into play into something that is so people focused, so hands on. Tell us about the moment that you said, wow, it's time to start magic. Tell us how you met Andy Coughlin, your co-founder, what his background is, and how you two decided this was the moment now. And I'm so embarrassed. I only realized the other day that MAJC is both of your initials.
Yeah, that is true. Well, so Andy was a great customer at my last restaurant, Townsman in Boston. And Andy would come in all the time and he would sit at the Crudo bar. We had this kind of counter style, like a diner style counter where we had a lot of the cold food coming off of, and it was very performative. I had cooks behind there slicing the meats and doing all the things. And he loved the Crudo bar. And so he'd come in and I'd just cook for him. And we just talk about food and hospitality. And he grew up in hospitality a little bit. Like me, he like was a dishwasher at one point and stood next to his grandma in the kitchen and all the things. But he didn't know hospitality the way I knew it. He knew he enjoyed being a customer of it. And so we would talk about all the things happening in the hospitality space and what the pain points were, particularly as an owner operator. And I was straight up with him and very honest. And he said, like, there's something there. Like with my experience, which at that point was Microsoft for many years, working as one of their VPs of marketing, to Sonos, who he helped take public, starting a couple small VC firms in Boston, and then eventually Meta, where he had been for the last 6 or 7 years prior to our engagement. He was like full on tech. And so he's like, the thing that I want to try and achieve, or at least talk about, is like, how do we scale? Because the problem with hospitality is that it's very analog, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the experience of being able to deliver memorable moments, right? Like that's an analog thing. Like it's you and the customer or you and your team and building that culture and the whole thing. But we started talking about, well, what's the potential to be able to scale that so that we can support operators and give them the best tools and make them succeed in new and different ways and ultimately make them be more profitable. And so that's kind of where the seeds were planted for MAJC. And so we continued to go through our own careers, and I went on to work for Andrew Zimmern as his VP of culinary for a while. And Andy was coming off the tail end of Meta, and he picked up the phone and called me one day and said, I think I'm getting ready to leave Meta. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. And so we started, as a side hustle, started building the architecture for what MAJC would become. And it took us probably a year or more to do that. And here we are today. So it's amazing to watch it. It's organic, it's evolving, and I'm sure that it'll be a very different company in 5 years than it even is today.
Oh gosh, even in 6 months.
Yeah.
You know how this goes. And so, I mean, you're at a level of excellence. Andy is like clearly the same level of excellence from the tech world. And working with those larger companies within tech, especially, he probably had his moment where he's like, this is exhausting. I want to do something that's mine.
Yeah.
And can really feel good at that. He gave it a shot. So I love that you come from these two backgrounds. You both understand, again, inherently not only the problem, but then you're bringing your skill sets as co-founders that are just so complementary, which is just, it's so important.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thanks.
you've literally worked with your wife, so you know what having a co-owner is like. And
Totally.
yeah, having a co-founder is like a marriage. You better be on the same page and understand what each other's strengths and weaknesses are.
100%. 100%. And so MAJC has been built, and it's MAJC, to your point. MAJC has been built to be the kind of de facto recruiting, retention, and development tool for the folks in hospitality. So we are building a really unique technology that encompasses a community that is membership-based, where folks from all over the world can come in and talk to other owner-operators and managers just like them, to hear the hard stories, to help fight the problems, and also to celebrate the wins, right? Yeah. And then in addition to that, we've got a ton of tools and resources that are in the community for folks to use. And then simultaneously, we're building software. So we have some software releases that are coming distinctly for hospitality that are going to be pretty interesting and pretty disruptive, and hopefully show us new ways that we can recruit the best talent, retain the best talent, and continue to develop those people who want to be developed and who want a clear path as to how to succeed in this business. So it's really exciting, and I'm learning so much, and the ability to fuse what has been my lifelong passion with people and hospitality and empowering those teams with the ability to scale through software. Andy and I say this all the time, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but we mean it. Like, we are in the business of improving people's lives. And like, that is the mission. That's what we want to do.
And I think it's not even tongue in cheek. Like, it's just That's just what it is. Couple questions behind that. So if this was your VC 10 word pitch, you'd say MAJC.ai is Reddit meets the best of the best development and HR software out there. But it's for the hospitality industry specifically. Why do you think it's taken so long for someone to start building a product like Magic? And, why do you think there just hasn't been an emphasis on this, given that the corporate world, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of iterations of something like this for them?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And it's something we ask ourselves all the time, because I think that in so many ways, the hospitality industry has been left behind. A lot of the workflow is very archaic, right? Like you can ask any chef or GM about how they organize their day-to-day work, and they're bound to tell you Google Docs and Excel spreadsheets, right? And that's okay, but there's other ways. And I think that is our goal, is to uncover the opportunity that is like right underneath the surface, to build tools, to build resources, to bring in our expert network. Now that we've partnered with some amazing folks, we've got HR partner in the community. We have a new finance expert in the community. We have mental health coming and sustainability, like all of these things. Like I would go through the day to day. And as you can imagine, I'm connected with a million chefs on this thing, right?
Yes.
And so I'm watching the texts go back and forth in my chat channels about, how do I negotiate a lease? What's a proper way to have a coaching session with an employee that's having a hard time? You name it. And I'm like, why are we having these conversations on our phone? Why isn't there a central place that we can go as operators? Why isn't there a single point of origin for all of the best practices, all of the best insight that's gathered, aggregated, and presented in a way that's really digestible for people? And so that is what has really driven our desire to create a program and a platform that is easy to use, that is as few clicks as possible, and that will get people to become advocates for this new learning system. And so, it's not without its challenges. Listen, like we are re-engineering, in a sense, like the way the industry thinks. And I recognize that there's a tremendous hill to climb there. But the people who are community members now and who we are showing the product to, and the beta test that we're doing, like the feedback is like, whoa, like why hasn't this existed before? And think about all the other applications this thing could have going forward. And that's the stuff we get really excited about.
Yeah, I love being a Magic community member myself. It's so interesting and cool from my perspective, from the marketing and content side of things, to see the issues that folks who are owners, operators, or in different types of roles within hospitality are asking each other, and putting out there to the world. So, couple quick questions about the community itself. So you said you've grown it very organically. It is global, which is so cool. So you're focused on individuals. How have you been finding them? How did your flywheel start going here? And do you ever see yourself taking on the challenge of essentially selling to businesses one day? Because as we know, every restaurant owner is like, why do I need another piece of tech here? I've got so many and none of them are connected.
Yeah. All great questions. Well, I'll take it kind of one by one. So the community was stood up, and maybe we had 4 or 5 members, right? Including founders. And basically the way that we tried to get the message out was we recognized that we needed to be creating content. So that's when the podcast started. So we have 2 podcasts right now, one long format, one short format. The long format is called Restaurant Ready. The short format is called Serving Success. They're meant to be kind of really engaging opportunities to hear stories from other owner operators and managers around the globe that inspire you to do your best work. And so I tapped my network pretty extensively. We've got some amazing interviews. But, that then trickled into written content. We needed to be developing newsletters and templates and all of these things, right? So we brought in Carolyn Grillo, who's amazing, and I've known for a long time. She worked at America's Test Kitchen for quite a long time as one of their editors and writers. And so she's helping us develop a bunch of amazing written content. And so it just continued that way. And the next thing you know, like you're saying, we are now here, I guess, over a year, almost a year into it being live. And we've got over close to 500 members in the community, a couple thousand followers on social. It's early days, right? And there's like definitely great aspirations for growing that awareness, but it's happening and we're watching the conversations take place and finally become truly organic, and members checking in with each other and DMing one another and asking each other questions. So that feels great. And the partnerships we brought in and the expert sessions that we do in the community and the office hour sessions that I do with our community, these live kind of opportunities to engage within the four walls of the digital community, bring people in and they get to poke around and see what we're up to. So it's all awesome and it's continuing to grow. Yes, is the short answer to your other question, which at some point it's not all going to be free, right? And I think like once you have to reconcile that, but it's why we're pumping so much value into the community right now, is because we want the founding members to help us formulate like what is valuable, what isn't valuable, what do I wish there was more of, right? And at some point that'll change and that'll turn off, but we're not there yet. The goal is to grow the base, right? And I think, the biggest thing there is the value that it has for operators, especially when we start talking about some of the stuff that's on the horizon for us, which is developing tools to help kind of middle managers, if you will, AGMs, GMs, sous chefs, chefs, upskill themselves, right?
Yeah.
Through MAJC and become a part of the MAJC universe in terms of accreditation even, or what we're early days, what we're calling MAJC Academy, which will be the ability to get certified in various things, right? That makes you more appealing as a candidate, even when you go someplace else. And so all of these things are kind of in the stew, right? And I think that when we look at the information aggregated down and distilled down to a really understandable kind of single page, if you can envision basically what you're getting as an operator right now out of your employees and the productivity associated with that, as opposed to investing in your employees and spending time to help develop them as human beings and workers in the workforce, like you're going to see an amazing return on that. I know because I've done that. I don't think every operator thinks through that lens necessarily, but the value is in the savings, right?
Yeah.
From a time perspective and also from a training perspective. Every new employee costs us over $6,000. So if we can begin to eliminate those reoccurring fees that it costs to keep bringing in new people, and we can train great people and make them better, then that's what it's all about. I think just to put a fine point on it, like it's a philosophy shift. Like it is definitely a philosophy shift. I think the opportunity right now, especially given the workforce and the challenges that we're seeing in the workforce, the opportunity is in investing in our people.
Yes. Like you said, reducing turnover, not seeing people as disposable, because I think especially people might think that in this industry is, well, it's fine. I'll just go find someone else who can do your job.
Right.
And I love how you're bringing in the academy moments. It feels very LinkedIn, HubSpot, specifically for the hospitality industry. Brilliant organic marketing, because everything that you put out there, especially on the podcasts, it's exactly what you can find on MAJC. It's essentially your way of saying, want more of this? You can actually get your questions answered, and you can get one-on-one time with people who have gone through this. So I love all of it so much. What would you say are the biggest questions, or you're starting to see, hey, people are asking for X, Y, and Z more, and that's what we're going to build towards?
Yeah, it's a really great question. We are very vocal in our community about wanting to make sure that we get fast and early feedback from our members. That is what's going to set us apart. And we listen. It's not performative. Like we really take that stuff to heart. We're talking right now actually about developing almost a membership board, if you will, like people who are extremely active in the community to create a board and help us influence the outcome of the product. So that's all real. And it's just amazing to me. Just as a funny example, like I had somebody that was brand new in office hours today who I'd never met. And I love it when that happens. And they dipped in just to kind of like test the waters and see what it was all about. And they started asking some pretty pointed questions about their specific business. And I didn't want to get too far off the track of our conversation. They said, well, what would be the best way for me to get more information on this particular question, or set up a time to talk with somebody? Is there somebody at MAJC that I can kind of glean some of the best answers off of. And I said, yeah, book a session with me. It's all free. Just go in, drop me a DM. Let's set up a time and chat. And like, if I can bring other people into that conversation as well, who are experts in other areas, like I'll do it. And I think that's a unique ability we have, right? So I don't know. It's exciting right now. And I love being able to give back to this community in this way.
It's really hands-on mentorship. And you are scaling it by allowing that community aspect of, hey, I've got a query, who can answer it, or who wants to respond, who wants to set up either one-on-one time with me, or we can DM, or just check out the comments, just like you would with, say, a Reddit question.
Totally. And I think that's the important thing is it's not just me, right? And like, I recognize I've got some experience in the business, but not everybody wants to just come there to talk to me, which is great. Like, I hope that's not the case, but I'm able to work with the team to attract some really amazing people. Like we have HopDove now, who is our human resources expert, and they're a firm based out of Boston that deals explicitly with the hospitality industry, doing HR for the hospitality community. They have a labor attorney on their team as one of the founders who's brilliant. So we bring in that kind of level of knowledge. And then we have the finance, as I mentioned as well, and mental health coming. And so we're bringing in the community. We're talking with the folks that are in our network. We're reaching out of network to folks we don't know who are also experts to say, hey, come check this thing out. So it's really like one of those, it takes a village type of approaches. But I know that's how we're going to get the best information. So.
Absolutely. So speaking of the village, the very large village that is the hospitality industry, so food and bev, hospitality, agriculture, you launched during a really interesting and very particularly difficult time. There are so many policies that are changing everything on a day-to-day basis, from tariffs to, unfortunately, all of the immigration policies and ICE raids that have been happening. What are you doing through the MAJC community, and what do you think that you're all doing well so that you can provide resources and ideas and ways for people to feel like they're safe and can get through this really tough time together?
Yeah. Well, the first way I'll answer that is saying that MAJC is unique because not this automated thing. Like we have an AI address because we do use AI to help like aggregate our thoughts and to check our spelling and our grammar and like all those things, right? And also help us develop some insights that are more national averages and national insights and things like that. But there's humans in there every day. And it's what we like to call HITL, right? It's human in the loop. So there's always human engagement, and that aspect of our community will never go away, whether it's me doing office hours or expert sessions with Duff Goldman or whatever it is. Like, there's a value certainly in that. I think as far as some of the specific questions you asked on just state of the world and the challenges and roadblocks that exist for hospitality professionals right now, I think creating a space where people are comfortable having the hard conversations is huge. And there's a lot of hard conversations to have right now, but making sure they feel supported and making sure that we are listening to them and the challenges that they're having, and then finding really distinct, explicit ways to address those things as they come up. And there's always going to be that stuff, right? Like there's never any good time to open a restaurant. There's never any good time to be a small business owner. There is no such thing. You kind of have to just put one foot in front of the other and go. But like doing that without something like MAJC, I can't imagine. Like I did that for years, and there's many that do that, but it's so isolating and it's so lonely, and you're always forced to try to kind of come up with the best decisions on your own. And what a terrible way to navigate the world and to navigate your business. Yes. Why not have a tool like this to help you make the best decisions?
Yes. Thank you for providing that space, and thank you for providing that community so that folks can continue to learn and continue to feel, like you said, not isolated. We're all in this together, and there is a way forward for any sort of issue that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Working for
always. What do they say? I love Peloton, and they like to say you are a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time.
That's right. That's right. I like that.
So last few questions. Before we get to the world's best and hardest questions, I could talk to you all day, but I know you're very busy. Yeah. You've done so much up until this date. what would you say you're most proud of? And how do you want to continue to grow? And what do you think is really next in the journey?
I am restless. It's just how I'm built. And so there is so much to do with magic. I mentioned the Magic Academy, which Andy will probably be mad at me for even using those words on this podcast, but it's bound to be public at some point. But this real kind of process of like developing structure around building the better employee, that is the mission, and finding ways that people can feel more connected to their work, and not in a way that, your work becomes your life, right? Nobody wants that. But I think using the hours that we have in a day that we're committed to some sort of a job and a career to be more fulfilling and to make us feel like we're delivering a value and to be getting that value back from the places that we're working. Like that's the aspiration, I think. And so to that end, like there's a ton for us to do, but where we're headed is a pretty unique space. And I think that we have some test cases coming in, but it's still early days in terms of the owners and the operators that are kind of deploying their team into Magic and using it as a way for folks to improve themselves, upskill themselves, but also to build personal like values, right? There's something in that for all of us in the work that we do while we're on this earth to have it be meaningful. And I think like that's at the heart of all of it. So all I can really say is we have a lot of gifts to give in Magic, and they're going to start rolling out here over the next 6-12 months. And I'm so excited to test and learn. Like we're big test and learners. We really believe in like, none of this is driven by ego. Like that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's driven by a true desire to like provide opportunity. It really is. And to democratize the knowledge that so many amazing operators around the world have. So there's a ton to do. I'm in spreadsheet hell and I love every, I say to Andy, I'm not cooking necessarily anymore, but I'm cooking spreadsheets, baby, all day long.
You are. You're cooking up those numbers. You're deep in the analytics now. Welcome.
Deep in the analytics. Yeah, you know.
I do. And I think there is just such a beauty of getting to use both sides of your brain. I think that's what I was maybe always hoping for before I got into startups and then specifically working with folks in food and bev on their businesses is like, I can't just be looking at numbers all day. That's not going to work well for me. But I always tell people they can't have essentially aesthetics without substance. What is the purpose behind it? What is it driving? Do you have an end goal for every single thing you're putting out there? So honestly, you answered the next question, which was essentially the piece of advice you'd give anyone for starting their own business, which is, like you said, you have to have heart in it. You can't have the ego. If you're doing this just for the money or if you're doing it just for clout, you are not going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember reading something, and I don't recall at this moment what it was. It might have been a Steve Jobs quote or something like that, but it was basically around like build the thing that you wish had existed, right? And that's what we're doing. Yeah. I wish that I had had this tool 20 years ago and my life would have been so different, That's where it all started and where it will all come back to. And so that's what we're trying to do. I love this business and this industry so much. And I have such a reverence for anybody that is decided to take this on as their professional pursuit. I can't say it enough. And I feel so connected to this industry, and Magic has made me feel even more deeply connected. And I just want to be there for those people. Like, I know what it's like closing your bar, walking out the door, locking the front door at 2 a.m. and like wondering how the fuck you're going to go in again tomorrow and do it all over again. Like, I get it, but when you got a little something in your pocket that's on your phone that you can check in with and get some of these amazing resources at your fingertips, I don't know. I just wish I'd had it so long ago. So I think that other people will feel the same. I do.
You're scaling. It's kind of like you're scaling hope.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the goal. I mean, yeah, it sounds crazy.
I know that's kind of making me like a little emotional thinking about that. Like in that sense where it's all what we need more of though right now. We need love, we need hope, we need kindness, and no one does it better than the hardest working people in the world.
Yeah. And we need truth. right? Like
Yes.
we need honesty. And like that is a huge part of what magic is built on. Like we might not always have the answers, but if we don't, we'll find somebody that does. Like full stop. Like I will stop at nothing to make sure that any member of our community or anybody who ends up wanting to try to use our software feels like they have the right answers and the most honest answers, right? Because ultimately, like when one person wins, like we all win. I've always felt that way, like in this business. Like even when I was an operator and I had my own restaurants and there was the guy across the street who started biting off my style and doing a similar thing to me, or I was like, good on them. Like, good on them. Like, if that guy wins, like that's good for the neighborhood. It's good for me. It's good. Like, I never really had that like real competitive perspective in this business. I just don't think it serves us. So for me, it's all about trying to expose that.
Yeah. All about the collaboration
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Matt, we've come to this part. I'm sad we're here, but I'm excited to hear your answer.
Oh boy.
So, little reminder for everyone, this is called the perfect bite, not just because it's a perfect bite of the folks we talk to across the food and bev value chain, but because we also all have our own perfect bite. Mine sometimes changes day to day, but it's based on our own unique taste buds and our memories and just those things that make us feel so good. It will never leave us. So, Matt, what is your perfect bite?
Oh man, it's so hard. But I grew up in a family that did a lot of fishing, and bluefish was always our preferred fish. And it's funny because I would grow up with friends who their families fish for stripers, and they would always kind of like look down at us and like, oh, bluefish is the pedestrian fish. But I grew up with my mom's bluefish pate, and to this day, it is like one of my favorite things. I served it at all my restaurants. I still make it. We smoke the bluefish in house and smoke it at home, and little cream cheese whipped up in there, and fresh chives and lemon juice and lemon zest and little herbs and spices and whatnot, slathered on a piece of freshly grilled ciabatta. It doesn't get much better than that. So I think that's probably my answer. But I'll say it with the caveat that it depends on the time of year because I am totally seasonally focused. And right now, that bite for me is burrata and strawberries. Like
Oh, yeah.
fresh burrata, fresh strawberries. I just can't get enough of it. So
Are you like a balsamic fan too? Like you add in a little?
balsamic's okay for me. I like little balsamic, but I'm just like, I can eat strawberries until the cows come home every which way, pickled, jammed, raw, you name it, roasted. I just love them. And we just kind of are leaving strawberry season now up here in Vermont.
Yes.
But man, strawberries and burrata, that's got to be my second.
Well, I was not too far from you just last weekend in Vermont. At Caspian Lake, we had a beautiful stone fruit caprese.
Ooh,
And it was incredible. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
They're both such unique choices. And I like how yours is that like New England play on what we'd call like a smoked whitefish dip here.
Yeah.
Probably a lot nicer.
Totally. And now you got me thinking about stone fruit. I mean, I could talk about stone fruit forever. I mean, is there anything better in the world than pulling a peach off of a tree that has been sitting in the sunshine and letting it just dribble all over your chin? I mean, that's what life's about.
Yeah. A plum galette. Don't get me started.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my pastry chef wife would probably want to be included in those perfect bites at some point.
Holy cow. Well, I got to visit you and Kate sometime, and
Totally.
we all just have to have an amazing meal together. Matt, thank you again so much for your time, your advice. Can you let folks know where they can find you? So, the Magic website, how to join the community, the social accounts, and where to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our website is MAJC.ai, and then we can be found on the socials at MAJC.ai as well. We're also on YouTube. If you look up Restaurant Ready or Serving Success, our podcasts are on YouTube. And we're also in Spotify and the App Store and all the places. So the Magic app is live in the App Store as well. If you search for Magic Community, it'll pop right up.
I'm honored to know you and to be part of your community.
Well, likewise. And thank you so much for having me.
course. And everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. This was Matt Jennings' Perfect Bite.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.